I've been acquainted with Kevin for roughly a year. We first encountered each other at a nearby boxing gym. Although we're not exactly the best of friends, we get along quite well. We began training together, and it wasn't long before we bonded over our shared enthusiasm for boxing. It was one of those friendships where you spend time together, mainly because you enjoy the same activity. Over time, though, we started chatting outside of the gym as well. Kevin is a laid-back, easy-to-talk-to 22-year-old. We don't hang out all the time, but when we do, it's usually enjoyable. Our talks often revolve around training, life, or just random topics. I don't know much about his family, but he's mentioned his mum a few times. I didn't think much of it at the time. One evening, after an especially tough training session, Kevin asked me for a favor. This wasn't something he usually did, but I figured it wouldn't be a big deal. Hey man, Kevin said, looking a bit hesitant. Do you think you could give my mum a ride tonight? I paused, a bit surprised by the request. Your mom? What's up? I asked. He explained that she works at a diner across town and it was getting late. He was supposed to pick her up, but got caught up and didn't want her walking home alone. He trusted me and asked if I could do it. I thought about it for a moment. I didn't really know his mom and wasn't sure what she'd think about a stranger picking her up. But the situation seemed harmless enough, and it wasn't far. So I agreed. Yes, sure, I said. It's not a big deal. I'll pick her up. Kevin's face lit up with relief. Thanks, man. I owe you one, he said. After a quick chat about the details, I agreed to swing by the diner around 11 p.m. when her shift would be over. As I drove there, I wondered what Kevin's mom would be like. I never really thought about her much. All I knew was that she worked at a local diner and Kevin had mentioned her a few times, but never in great detail. I wasn't expecting anything special, just a routine favor for a friend. When I pulled up outside the diner, I noticed it was nearly empty, with just a couple of cars parked outside. It was well past closing time, and the lights inside the restaurant had been dimmed. I parked, turned off the engine, and waited. A few minutes later, I saw a woman walking toward the entrance. She was tall and slender, with long brown hair tied back in a ponytail. As she got closer, I recognized her as Kevin's mum, though I had never actually seen her in person. I didn't expect her to look like she did. When she finally reached the car, I rolled down the window. She smiled warmly and introduced herself. Hi, I'm Grace, she said, her voice friendly and calm. I shook her hand and introduced myself, feeling a little awkward, but she didn't seem to mind. Grace was stunning. I didn't know how else to describe her. I expected someone who might look a little more like a typical 48-year-old woman. Maybe a bit older, perhaps a little worn out from working late nights. But no, she looked incredible for her age. If I hadn't known she was Kevin's mum, I would have guessed she was around 35, maybe 38. She got into the car, and we exchanged a few pleasantries as I started driving. The initial awkwardness quickly faded as we got into conversation. Grace was easy to talk to. We talked about work, the diner, and a little about Kevin. But she didn't say much about her personal life at first. I figured she didn't want to talk about anything too serious. And honestly, I didn't expect much of a deep conversation. But then she opened up. Kevin's a good kid, she said after a moment, her tone softening. Losing his father has been tough on him, on both of us, but he's handling it well. I just worry sometimes, you know? I didn't know how to respond at first. I just nodded, not wanting to say the wrong thing. I could tell she was a little emotional, talking about Kevin's father, but I didn't press her for more. She continued. His dad died in a car accident when he was young. It's been hard for him and for me too. But we're managing. I didn't know what to say to that. Losing a partner must have been incredibly tough, and I could hear the weight of those words in her voice. But she seemed to be in a good place, or at least she was trying to be. We talked for a few more minutes, and as we neared her home, I realized I didn't want the conversation to end. There was something about Grace that was captivating. Her confidence, the way she carried herself. She was clearly a woman who had been through a lot, but still had so much warmth and positivity about her. It was hard not to feel a little drawn to her. I pulled up outside her house, and she thanked me for the ride, but not before giving me a smile that lingered for a little too long. Something told me this wasn't just a simple favor. I wasn't sure why, but I could sense there was something more to this interaction than I initially expected. As I drove away, I thought about the night. There was something about Grace that intrigued me. She wasn't just Kevin's mom. She was someone who had clearly experienced a lot in life and carried herself with a kind of grace that made her stand out. I wasn't sure what would come of this, but I knew one thing for sure. Things weren't as simple as they seemed. A couple of days after the ride, I couldn't shake the memory of the night. It wasn't anything wild or dramatic, but something about the way Grace carried herself. The ease with which she spoke and the way she opened up to me had me thinking. Maybe it was just my natural curiosity, but I felt like there was more to her than met the eye. She was Kevin's mom, sure, but she was also her own person, someone with her own history and experiences, and I couldn't stop wondering what else she might have been through. The next time I saw Kevin at the gym, we had just finished a session. He was wiping the sweat from his forehead, catching his breath, and I was trying to cool down after a pretty intense workout. "Hey, man," I started casually. "Your mum's cool. She's really easy to talk to." Kevin looked up, a little surprised by the comment. "Oh, really? You guys hit it off or something?" I chuckled awkwardly, not sure how to explain. "Yeah, I mean, she's just... I don't know. She's really different from what I expected." Kevin grinned, clearly pleased that I wasn't bothered by the idea of hanging out with his mom. "Yeah, she's awesome, and she doesn't usually open up to people so easily. So I'm glad you two got along." I wasn't sure if Kevin realized just how much his mom had opened up to me. The way she spoke about losing her husband, her struggles with loneliness. It was a lot for anyone to share, let alone with someone they didn't know that well. But there was something in her eyes when she talked about it. It was like she was still carrying the weight of the past. But there was a flicker of hope in there too, as if she was waiting for something new, something better to come along. "I'm not saying you guys are best friends or anything," Kevin added, clearly trying to sound casual, but failing to hide the hint of mischief in his voice. "But maybe you could do it again sometime. She liked you." I felt a knot form in my stomach at his words. I wasn't sure how to respond to that. I'd only driven her once, had a conversation that lasted maybe 20 minutes, and already Kevin was hinting at something more. Was he really trying to set me up with his mom? I didn't know how to feel about it. "I don't know, man," I said, my voice a little hesitant. "It's not like that. We just talked." Kevin just shrugged, seemingly not fazed by the whole thing. "I get it, but she's been through a lot. I'm just saying you never know." As the conversation shifted back to the usual gym banter, I tried to shake the feeling that had settled in my chest. What did Kevin mean by that? Was there something I wasn't picking up on? Later that night, I decided to text Grace. It wasn't anything special, just a simple message to check in and say it was nice to meet her. I didn't expect anything in return, but I figured it couldn't hurt to be polite. To my surprise, she responded almost immediately. "It was really nice talking with you, Wilson. You're a good guy, and I'm glad Kevin has someone like you around. I don't usually open up to people, but you made it easy. Hope we can talk more soon." I read the message a few times, feeling the weight of her words. It was a simple message, but there was a sincerity to it that I couldn't ignore. She said she didn't usually open up to people, but she made an exception for me. And something about that felt different. For the next few days, we texted back and forth. At first, it was nothing out of the ordinary. Small talk about work, the weather, even a little bit about Kevin. But then it slowly began to shift. Grace started sharing more about herself, her life, and the struggles she'd faced. And I started realizing that she wasn't just Kevin's mom. She was someone who had lived a full life, and she still had a lot to offer. She wasn't the typical older woman I might have imagined. She was strong, confident, and had this quiet beauty about her that was impossible to ignore. As the days went on, the conversations grew longer. We talked about everything. Her life after Kevin's dad passed away, her job at the diner, and how she was still trying to figure out what came next for her. It wasn't just casual small talk anymore. It was deep, meaningful conversation, and I started to realize that I was looking forward to our texts more than I cared to admit. One night, she sent me a message that caught me off guard. "Wilson, I hope this isn't too forward, but I really enjoyed talking to you. You make me feel like I can actually have a conversation with someone without feeling judged. I know we don't know each other well, but I'd like to get to know you more. I hope that's okay." I stared at my phone for a long time, my heart racing. Was this what I thought it was? Was Grace interested in me? I hadn't seen it coming, but now that it was here, I wasn't sure what to do with it. It wasn't easy to ignore the text message Grace had sent me. I had read it over and over, trying to understand if I was reading too much into it, or if she really meant what she said. I wasn't looking for anything complicated, especially not with someone like her. Kevin's mom. I knew she was a strong woman, but this was different. Was I supposed to just shrug it off? Or was she genuinely interested in me? The next day, I tried to push it all out of my head. I went to work, did my usual thing at the gym, and tried to keep my mind occupied. But no matter how hard I tried, that message kept replaying in my mind. That evening, I ended up texting her back. "Hey Grace, it's no problem at all. I really enjoy our conversations too. It's nice to talk to someone who gets it." I didn't know if that was the right thing to say, but it was honest. I wasn't about to dive into anything too personal just yet. And to be completely honest, I wasn't sure what I was even hoping for. We had connected, sure. But it didn't mean it had to go anywhere beyond just friendly conversation, right? The next few days were a blur. We continued texting, and honestly, it felt like we were both walking this fine line. I was trying to figure out where this could go without making things weird for either of us. It was hard not to think about her, though. Every conversation we had felt so easy, like we'd known each other much longer than just a few days. But still, I didn't want to rush things. One evening, as I was about to head to bed, I got another message from her. Wilson, I hope I'm not coming off too forward, but would you mind grabbing coffee sometime? Just to talk more. It's totally okay if you're not up for it. I just thought it might be nice. I had to put my phone down for a second. A part of me hesitated, unsure if I was overstepping by agreeing to meet her outside of the usual texting. But then, I remembered how easy it had been to talk to her. I remembered how much she had opened up to me in a short amount of time. And honestly, I was curious. I tapped a quick reply. Sure, coffee sounds good. When are you free? We set up a time for the weekend. I couldn't believe I was actually doing this. Was I thinking I was about to meet Kevin's mum for coffee? But then again, we had already exchanged so much that it didn't feel like a huge leap. It was just coffee, right? When Grace walked in, she looked just as put together as she always did. She had this quiet elegance about her that was impossible to miss. She smiled when she saw me, and I stood up to greet her. Hey, Wilson, she said, her voice calm but warm. Hey, Grace, thanks for meeting up, I replied, gesturing toward the table. Please have a seat. We sat down, and the conversation started out pretty normal. Small talk about the weather, her work, the usual stuff. But as we got into it, the conversation turned deeper, more personal. We ended up talking about her life, the struggles she'd faced after losing Kevin's dad, and how despite everything, she still managed to move forward. It was strange, but I found myself really listening. It wasn't just about talking. This was about connecting, understanding. Grace wasn't just Kevin's mum. She was a person with her own story. And I found myself respecting her even more for it. As the coffee shop started to empty out, we were still talking. I glanced at the clock, realizing that time had flown by. It was almost like we had no real agenda. We were just enjoying the conversation. At one point, Grace looked at me with a smile, her eyes soft. You know, she said, I don't usually do this, meet up with people I hardly know, but I'm glad we did. It's been nice to have someone to talk to share some of this with. I haven't had that in a long time. I felt a sense of responsibility then. I wasn't just here because I was trying to be polite. I was genuinely listening to her, and for the first time in a long while, I understood what she meant. Sometimes people just need someone to talk to. As we finished our coffee, I could tell she was about to say something else, but she held back, smiling as if she was uncertain. Thank you for this, Wilson. I really appreciate it, she said. Anytime, I replied. I replied to Grace, meaning every word. We bid each other farewell, and I exited the cafe, my mind racing. It was just a coffee, but it felt like more. Our conversation had sparked something, making it feel different. I was uncertain about where this would lead, but I felt unable to stop it. I didn't want to stop it. I was starting to see Grace not just as Kevin's mum, but as someone I was genuinely connecting with. Although I wasn't ready to fully admit it, I knew things had changed between us. There was no going back. The days following our coffee were confusing. Grace's presence lingered in my mind. I couldn't deny it. There was something about her that kept drawing me in, even though I knew I should keep my distance. She was Kevin's mum, after all, and despite our growing bond, I knew I had to set some boundaries. But it wasn't easy. We kept texting, her messages warm and thoughtful, just like our cafe conversation. She seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me better, and the feeling was mutual. Yet every time I responded, a voice in my head told me to slow down, to remember where this could lead. She wasn't just any woman. She was someone I had a strong connection with. But that connection was complicated. It wasn't supposed to happen. One evening, she texted me, asking if I was free to talk. My heart skipped a beat when I saw her name on the screen. I quickly agreed, hoping it was just another casual chat. When I called her, she answered right away. "Hey, Wilson," she said softly. "I've been thinking about our last conversation, and I just wanted to make sure I'm not crossing any lines." I felt my heart rate increase. Was she regretting our coffee? Was I being too forward? No, Grace. I quickly reassured her. "I'm glad we talked. I think it was really nice. You don't have to worry about anything." There was a pause before she spoke again. "I just don't want to make things awkward," she said. "I'm still trying to figure out how to move on from everything that happened, losing Kevin's dad. It's just a lot to process, you know. I understood that losing someone wasn't something you just got over, but I wasn't sure where I fit in all this. Was I just someone to listen, or was I something more?" "I get it," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But Grace, you're not alone in this. You've got friends, family, and you know I'm here too if you need someone to talk to." She let out a small sigh, almost relieved by my words. "Thanks, Wilson. I really appreciate it. It's just that sometimes I feel like I've been so focused on taking care of everyone else that I've forgotten about myself. And honestly, I don't know what to do with all of these feelings." I could hear the vulnerability in her voice, and it made me want to reach out and tell her everything would be okay. But I didn't want to cross a line. I wasn't sure if that was what she needed from me. She had been through so much already. "You don't have to have all the answers right now," I said. "You're doing the best you can, and I think that's more than enough." Another pause. Then she spoke again, quieter this time. "I know. I don't know what I'm looking for, Wilson. But sometimes when we talk, I feel like there's something more. And I don't know if it's just me, or if you feel the same." I froze. Did she just say that? Was she suggesting what I thought she was suggesting? I knew it wasn't right. But something inside me said it wasn't that simple. There was a connection between us. Something undeniable. But this was Kevin's mum. "I think I feel it too," I said, unsure if I should even admit it. "But Grace, we need to be careful. I don't want to mess anything up, especially not with Kevin." "I understand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't want to ignore what I'm feeling either. It's complicated, I know. But we can't deny what's happening between us." Her words sent a rush of emotions through me. I didn't want to acknowledge what we were talking about, but at the same time, I couldn't ignore it anymore. There was something between us, something real, even if it felt impossible. "We'll figure it out," I said, trying to sound calm. "But we have to be careful. We can't rush into anything. Let's just take this one step at a time, okay?" "I can do that," she replied softly. "One step at a time." The conversation ended shortly after that, and I was left with a knot in my stomach. We had said a lot, but also so little. The air between us was charged with something unspoken, and as much as I tried to push it away, I knew this wasn't just going to disappear. Whatever this was between us, it wasn't going anywhere. The next day, things felt different. There was an awkwardness between us, even in our usual texts. But it wasn't just awkward. It was like we were both trying to figure out what came next. There was this tension in the air, this anticipation. I could tell Grace felt it too. But despite everything, There was a part of me that was excited. I didn't know where this was going, or if it was even a good idea, but I couldn't stop thinking about her. And maybe that was the problem. It had been a few days since our conversation, but things between Grace and me were different. There was a tension that I couldn't ignore, and every time I saw her name on my phone screen, my heart would skip a beat. It wasn't like we were in constant communication, but when we did text, it felt more personal, more meaningful. One evening, she reached out to me again, asking if I wanted to grab a bite to eat. It wasn't an invitation I was going to refuse. I knew it would be another friendly hangout, but I had this feeling that things were changing, even if neither of us said it out loud. We met at a small, quiet diner on the edge of town. When she arrived, she looked effortlessly beautiful, her hair cascading over her shoulders, wearing a simple yet elegant outfit. There was a soft glow in her eyes, something I hadn't noticed before, but was unmistakable now. As soon as she sat down, she gave me a small smile. "You look nice," I said before I could stop myself. She laughed lightly, clearly not expecting the compliment. "Thanks. I'm just trying to do something for myself, you know." I nodded, trying to keep the conversation light. But there was something unspoken between us that was beginning to feel heavier. We were no longer just talking about casual things like work or daily life. Our discussions had grown more personal, more real. At some point during dinner, I noticed her glancing at me a little differently. The way she looked at me, it wasn't just a friendly glance anymore. There was something else in her eyes, something I couldn't quite name. I felt my chest tighten, and I tried to push the thought out of my mind, but it lingered there, pulling me in. I had been trying to keep my distance. This wasn't supposed to happen. I wasn't supposed to feel this way about her. But sitting there with her, I couldn't deny it. There was a connection, something between us that had been building ever since that night I drove her home. "So, Wilson," Grace said, breaking the silence that had hung between us for a moment. "I've been thinking. Maybe we've been overthinking things." I raised an eyebrow, unsure of where she was going with this. "What do you mean?" She shifted in her seat nervously, running a hand through her hair. "I mean, we keep talking about how complicated everything is. But maybe we're making it more complicated than it needs to be. Maybe we're just two people who get along really well." I could feel the air between us shift again. The tension was palpable. Was she suggesting what I thought she was suggesting? "Grace, I don't want to make things weird," I said, my voice a little unsteady. "I mean, what we're talking about, it's not something I expected. I never thought I'd find myself in this situation." She leaned forward slightly, her voice quieter now. "Neither did I. But sometimes things happen, Wilson, and you don't always have control over them." My heart was racing, but I still wasn't sure if I was ready to go there. This wasn't a simple crush or passing attraction. It was something deeper, something that made my mind spin when I thought about the possible consequences. "I care about you, Grace," I finally said, the words coming out before I could think them through. "I care about you more than I should, but I don't want to hurt you or Kevin." She looked at me, her expression softening. "You won't hurt me. And Kevin, he just wants me to be happy. He knows how hard things have been for me." I didn't respond right away, trying to absorb what she was saying. Her words felt reassuring, but there was still so much to consider. Grace took a deep breath and reached across the table, placing her hand on mine. The contact was electric. I felt a jolt of warmth surge through me. but I tried to keep my composure. "I think we're both scared," she said quietly. "But I don't want to be scared anymore. I'm ready to see where this goes, Wilson. Are you?" I didn't answer right away. The question lingered in the air, hanging between us like a weight. But in that moment, I realized something. I didn't want to walk away from this. I didn't want to regret not taking the chance. "I'm ready," I said finally, my voice steady, though my heart was still racing. "I'm ready if you are." Grace's face lit up with a smile, and I could see the relief in her eyes. We didn't need to say anything more. The decision had been made. We were starting something new, something real. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't just going through the motions of life. I was actually living. When the meal was over, we walked outside together. The cool night air felt refreshing as we stood by her car. She reached out and hugged me tightly. It wasn't a hug of friendship anymore. It was something more. Something I couldn't explain, but felt deeply. "I'm glad you're here," she whispered against my ear. And I knew in that moment that this was the beginning of something beautiful. I didn't know what would happen next, or how things would unfold, but I knew one thing for sure. We were both ready to explore whatever this was, and I couldn't wait to see where it would take us. It's funny how life works sometimes. One minute you're caught in a whirlwind of uncertainty, unsure of what's coming next. And the next, you find yourself standing in a place you never thought you'd be, where everything feels right. That's how I felt as I sat across from Grace one Sunday afternoon. The warm sunlight filtered through the window, casting a soft glow over everything. We were at her apartment, the same one she'd been living in for years. But today it felt different. It felt like home. Things had been so natural between us. The awkwardness that once hovered over our conversations had melted away, and we had settled into something real. Something I couldn't have imagined just a few months ago. We were talking about the future now, not just the present. And it felt good. It felt like we were ready to take that next step together. "You know, Grace," I said, leaning back on the couch, "I never thought this would happen. I didn't expect any of this." She smiled, her heart full. "Neither did I. But sometimes you don't realize what's right in front of you until it's too late," I replied, my voice soft. She met my gaze, and for a moment, we just looked at each other, both of us silently acknowledging what had come of this. "I'm glad we didn't let the fear hold us back," Grace said quietly. "I've been scared of starting over, of opening myself up again. But with you, it's different." I could see the sincerity in her eyes, and I felt the same way. I had been scared too, but there was something about Grace that made everything feel easier. I had found myself again in her presence, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly seen, truly understood. "I'm glad too, I said, reaching over to take her hand. "I think we make a great team, Grace. I feel like we've been through a lot together already, and it hasn't even been that long." She squeezed my hand gently, her eyes softening. "Yeah, it feels like we've known each other forever." There was a moment of silence between us, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was peaceful, like we both understood that we were exactly where we were supposed to be. No more doubt, no more second guessing. "I never expected this, you know," I said, leaning in a little closer. "I thought I was just doing a favor for Kevin when I drove you home that night. I didn't know it would lead to this." Grace chuckled softly, a small smile playing on her lips. "I didn't either. But I guess sometimes things happen for a reason. She was right. Our connection had started in such a simple way, but somewhere along the line, it had turned into something much more meaningful. It wasn't just about attraction anymore. It was about companionship, trust, and understanding. It was about feeling like we were both finally ready to share our lives with someone who truly got us. I'm glad it happened the way it did, I said, my voice steady and sure. And I'm glad it's you. Grace's smile widened, and she leaned forward to kiss me gently on the lips. It was a soft, tender kiss. And when we pulled away, I could see the warmth in her eyes. The same warmth I'd felt growing between us over the past few months. I'm glad it's you too, she whispered, her voice barely audible. We sat there for a while longer, just talking, enjoying each other's company. We talked about the things we wanted for the future, how we'd both been through difficult times, but now we could look ahead and see a life together. We had already started building something solid, and I knew it was only going to grow stronger from here. There was no more hesitation, no more wondering whether we were doing the right thing. We had already taken that leap, and we had both landed on solid ground. We were ready for whatever came next. The doorbell rang and Grace's face lit up. It was Kevin home from his visit to his father's place for the weekend. He came in with a big grin on his face, obviously happy to see us both. "Hey, you two," he said, giving us both a nod as he walked in. "How's everything?" I smiled at him. "Everything's good, Kevin. Everything's great." Grace looked at me and then at Kevin, a look of contentment on her face. "Yeah, everything's great," she said. And in that moment, I realized something. I had found the love I didn't know I was looking for. Grace and I had come a long way from that first car ride, and now we were building something real. I couldn't have asked for anything more. We may have started as a simple favor, but now we were a team. Two people who had found each other at just the right time. We were ready to face whatever life had in store for us, and that was all that mattered.